When Joanna got my story, and I mean all of it, every detail, all the pieces, she still looked at me and said, "Okay, like I choose you." And she knows it all now, and she still chooses me. And that has been the greatest gift that I kind of gave myself in recovery. And so that's what I tell people, like, if you want to feel chosen and loved, it will only come through honesty. It can't come from secrets. And so coming out of the shadows is what really gives ourselves the chance to be seen, to be accepted, and to be loved.
Life is hard, but marriage doesn't have to be.
We're Aaron and April Au, marriage mentors and coaches. Yes, marriage is complex, and our selfish human nature both pulls and pushes us apart. But God has so much more for our marriages.
Thank you for joining us at the Living Marriages podcast, where we share stories of hope and learn how God wants to breathe His life, healing, and health into our marriages.
Well, welcome to the Living Marriages podcast. We are so excited to have all the way from Tennessee via the magic of technology, the blessing of the technology we have to be interviewing a couple today. Matthew and Joanna Raabsmith are clinicians, speakers, and authors with over 20 years of combined experience in counseling and coaching. Matthew is a professional certified coach and a restoration coach. Joanna is a licensed marriage family therapist and a professional coach. Those are just the highlights. There's so much more to what they're doing. Together, they currently work at their private practice, the Raabsmith team, which specializes in helping couples find healing transformation as individuals and in their relationship. They've also co-authored the book, Building True Intimacy, Creating a Connection That Stands the Test of Time. They have 3 children, and it looks like homemade espresso and pickleball feature significantly into their lives as well. So Matthew and Joanna, welcome to the Living Marriages podcast.
Thanks so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, very looking forward to the conversation.
We are so excited to have you here. Well, Matthew and Joanna, we'll dive right into your story because one of the areas you and your team have specialized training in is really in helping couples find healing for betrayal trauma. Now, if I'm understanding your story correctly, this wasn't your life plan when you before you got married.
Right.
No.
Can you
They
share
don't
your
suggest it either.
Okay.
Don't, it's we like where we've ended up. We did not enjoy the path we took.
Here,
So we tell everybody, like, find the destination. Don't necessarily follow our path.
Okay. So what's the story? How did you end up where you're at now?
Yeah. So, it was interesting. Joanna and I, when we first met and kind of started dating, we had a sense really early on that God was calling us to do something with our marriage or with our relationship at the time. And we felt like we were going to even impact marriages, that there was a sense of wanting to do something for marriages, but we really had no idea what that was going to look like. We also had no idea what it looked like to have a healthy marriage. I mean, we had had some examples in our life, some not so great examples. And we kind of got together pretty quickly between dating and engaged. And so it was kind of like, we'll figure it out as we go. We'll kind of build the plane as we fall. And we realized you fall really fast when you don't have a plane. And so we needed help. And so we started looking for help. And we were really blessed because we were in seminary at the time. And God opened some doors to some resources through therapy and kind of psychological modalities that were grounded in scripture, but were really transformational, both for us individually and as a couple. And we thought, great, we've got it. We've got it all figured out. Life is good. We're gonna just take off. Then we realized, like, there was a lot more to our relationship than we were really talking about. And one of the big parts of it was that I had carried into our relationship a really almost lifelong addiction and choice of using pornography and sexual addiction, and had kept this completely from Joanna, had totally blocked it. And it was beginning to really erode the health of our relationship, kind of like a cancer over time. It was really attacking our body. And a few years into our relationship, it was really kind of coming to a head.
Yeah, and he had not shared any of what was going on with me. And I had even asked from time to time if that was a thing, if it was coming up at all. And he would say, like, no, that's in my past. I'm not struggling now. And so I really had no idea what was, I felt like we were stuck. We were getting stuck,
Mm.
even though we had done so much work and we had seen some progress that was really positive. The values that we shared about wanting intimacy and connection and the type of relationship we wanted, every time I would move towards that, Matthew would pull away and I didn't understand
Mm.
why. And so it was really confusing. I started to feel really hopeless about the situation in some ways until I started. He mentioned we were at seminary together. We did MDivs together. And then I went back to get my MFT. And the very first class I took in my MFT program was a 2 week intensive called Shame and Guilt, which is a
Oh.
great, really fun 2 week intensive. Great start. But as a part of that, class, a pastor, an anonymous pastor, actually came to the class and shared his journey, his testimony of coming out of sex addiction into a place of recovery, sobriety, as well as what it looked like to restore a marriage after that level of betrayal. And as he was sharing, like my gut was screaming at me, this is it. This is your experience. This is exactly what it feels like in your relationship. And so that day I went home and I finally confronted Matthew. I shared what the pastor had shared and confronted him and asked him point blank, is this happening in our marriage? Is this why we're getting so stuck?
And my plan had always been to take that information that I had been hiding to the grave. I wasn't ever going to tell anybody
Right.
about it. It was going to any it
Mhm.
was never going to be shared. But I was also coming to this place in my life where I could start to really see the damage it was doing. And I was
Mm.
starting to get really hopeless and really feel like we're going to lose this relationship if I don't do something about this. And I'd actually prayed to God a couple months prior to that and said, God, if you would give me a path forward, if you just show me a way forward, I will take it, but I need to know there's a way. And so Joanna kind of comes home and she's telling me this story, and I'm trying to play it off. I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting story of which we will have no talk about, right? And she just point blank, she was like, is this what it is? And I just really honestly, I think it was the Holy Spirit felt just a kind of sense in my heart. And I just blurted out, yes. And the moment I blurted it out, I was like, oh God, what have you done? Like you've killed your relationship. And Joanna, as kindly as she could, having just realized the betrayal that had experienced, handed me the sheet of paper with the path that this pastor had followed and said, here's your playbook.
Wow.
And so we started recovery. And recovery was a really difficult process. There was a lot of damage that was done by my actions, by the lies, the way that it had really eroded our relationship. And it was a long, kind of bumpy process putting it back together. And that's really what motivated us to get into this work is that we wandered for so long figuring out how do you actually rebuild a marriage when there's
Yes.
when your plane explodes in midair? Because that's kind of what it felt like. It was like, well, now we don't even have a plane. And so what does that look like? And that's really what God has been so gracious in doing is allowing us to have this ministry and this work of helping couples really walk that path.
Mhm.
And the beauty of it is that when we did that, we found out that these are actually the core components of great marriages everywhere.
Wow.
It's not just marriages that restore from
Yeah.
betrayal, but actually every
Yeah.
relationship needs.
Map we needed at the beginning. We didn't
Mhm.
have it.
Yep.
Everything crumbled, but it's exactly what Matthew's saying. Every healthy relationship will have these building blocks in it.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, Joanna, when you handed him that paper,
Mhm.
what did it look like after that? Did you participate in his recovery in any way? Was that kind of, did you say, look, you need to take care of this? I'll be praying for you. I'm going to support you, but you have to take care of this. What did it look like?
Yeah, I think because of the work we had already done, I'm so thankful that we had the opportunity to kind of understand our own stories, our painful emotions when we get triggered, our destructive coping behaviors that can come out of that emotional pain, right? That does not create any kind of healthy dynamic. And so some of that work we had done allowed me to understand myself and that when I feel unsafe, I want to control because that
Ah.
brings me a sense of safety and right and security and that ultimately it's a false sense of safety and security. And so I knew that if I controlled Matthew's recovery, yes, momentarily I may feel more safe, but long term that would never be a truly safe relationship because I cannot trust him if he can't take responsibility for his own health, sobriety, and recovery. And so I knew I'm handing this over and I have to kind of step back and wait to see what he does with that.
Mm.
Now, that doesn't mean I wasn't involved at all in the process, that we didn't have conversations about, okay, what does this need to look like, as well as figuring out my own healing journey and taking responsible for myself. And that was a little bit harder because when we went through recovery, betrayal trauma was like not really a term.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of support out there for partners. And so it took me a while to figure out the pieces that I needed to heal from, what that looks like for me personally, but then also relationally, what that looks like. Eventually being able to bring in my experience, share my pain, and have Matthew respond with empathy instead of defensiveness was a really important part of that relational healing. But yeah, it was definitely hard and terrifying because when I handed that list to him and kind of stepped back, I didn't know what he was going to choose. Right? Very
Right.
honestly, he could have been like, nope, not interested, or I've got this, and I would know he doesn't really have this. Otherwise, he probably would have done something about it by now. Or maybe he wants to and he's going to engage the resources, but I didn't know, are they going to be enough for him? Are they going to be what he really needs to come out of this? And so there was a lot of fear, a lot of questions in that early phase as I was waiting.
Mm. Joanna, I'm just wondering if you could speak to our listeners out there where there may be one spouse who is saying, I'm suspecting there's something getting in the way of our
Yeah.
intimacy.
Yeah.
And maybe their spouse is being prompted by the Spirit, but like Matthew is not quite there yet, and it's just going to
Yeah.
take. What encouragement would you have for that person who is saying, I feel like a confrontation needs to happen or disclosure needs
Yes.
to
I would say, first of all, trust your gut.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
amazing how many partners I work with who, when confronted with the option of trusting their gut or trusting their partner who
Mhm.
may be lying, they will choose to trust their partner because
Okay.
it feels more scary, right? The reality of if they're lying and they are engaged in this, that feels more scary than just denying my own experience. And
Mm.
so, one of the things I would say is your body is telling you something,
Okay.
right? If you're feeling those urges, it's because there's probably a lack of safety somewhere in the relationship. And if you're struggling to pinpoint it, getting a professional or an outside voice who can help you just process through what am I experiencing and why am I maybe feeling this can empower you to then step into the relationship and use that voice, right? You
Mm.
validated your own experience. You can now step in and go, hey, we need to talk about what I'm experiencing and
Mhm.
we need to get honest. And it's kind of an invitation to the other person to join you in that experience and to hopefully work together to figure out what's going on. That would be obviously best case scenario. Very
Mhm.
often that person is like, nope, not going there. And then you may need to enlist other outside resources or professionals to kind of help support you guys as a couple. But that would be the starting place is learning to trust yourself and learning to understand kind of what your body is trying to tell you.
And
Okay.
I think one of the things to mention too is that we do have to overcome, I think, some cultural assumptions around privacy. There's this
Right.
idea that
Yeah.
I'm a kind of isolated person that chooses to kind of engage this relationship when I
Mhm.
want to, but realizing marriage, especially from a biblical standpoint, is that I'm always a husband. I am a
Mm.
husband every moment of every
Mhm.
day. I'm also a father now. I have kids. I'm never not a father.
Right.
And so I don't actually have a time when I'm not in my relationship. But culturally, there's this idea and this compartmentalization that I have husband time. And you
Mhm.
even will say, like, I'll hear guys say, like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like a bachelor's week for me. I'm like, you're not a bachelor anymore. Like, that's not actually a thing. It
Nope.
stopped
That's
being a
true.
thing when you put the ring on. And so what we know is that the two shall become one. So everything
Mhm.
that's mine is hers. And that means everything I do is hers. It doesn't mean that she gets to decide it for me. That's
No.
her parenting me, but we do get to decide it together. And so I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of fear of like losing this independence. But what
Mhm.
I'm actually doing is I'm holding on to privacy, I'm holding on to secrecy, I'm holding on to compartmentalization. But what I'm
Yeah.
also doing is I'm holding off of or I'm pushing off
Mhm.
connection.
Mm.
I'm wanting this connection, but I'm wanting it on my terms and not actually finding it. And so we help a lot of couples whether there's betrayal or not, realize like, hey, we're going to have to work to create this new
Yeah.
level of transparency and openness
Yeah.
between us.
Mm.
Wow.
And now, Matthew, when you were handed that sheet and
Mhm.
you realized, okay, I just admitted that this is a problem, what did the journey look like for you? I can imagine that there were some really difficult times along that road and
Yeah.
times when you thought, I don't know if I can do this. What did that look like?
Yeah, it was not an easy journey. And kind of like Joanna said, I was lucky in that we had some background and I think kind of understanding our patterns and why we do things. And so I did have a kind of sense of, oh, I think I actually know what's driving this. It's
Mm.
it's it's less about the sex and the pornography. It's way more about the emotional baggage, the kind of the what's underneath the tip of the iceberg that's really causing all the problems. And it was a lot of things that had really been unresolved in my life for a long time, things that had happened to me at a really young age that I had continued just to kind of ignore and move on. And so to be able to deal with the behavioral pattern, I knew I had to deal with the damage underneath. And so one of the things that was really helpful for me, and this was recommended, was that I go to an intensive. And it was a 3-day intensive. There were about 30 guys all there because they struggled with pornography and usually just gotten caught. So,
Mm.
everybody's super happy and stoked, right? Nobody wants to be there. They would joke, like we know nobody's happy they're here. But it was one of the most transformational experiences because I heard other men for the first time in my life talk about pornography, sexual addiction, sexual brokenness. They owned it without shame. They talked about their past and they took responsibility for what it had done to other people, the people that had been hurt by it, especially their wives. And it really helped me to step into that place of kind of ownership and responsibility and say, this is mine. And it also helped me to see, like, I want out of this. I think
Mm.
what was so helpful for us was because Joanna was willing to step back, that let me decide, do I care about being free of this or not?
Right.
Is this my thing? Because what we see a lot of times in couples who struggle is a lot of times the partner, the wife is like, hey, you need to deal with this. And the husband never really decides for himself. I want this out of my life. And so that retreat, that intensive helped me get to that place. And then I got involved in 12-step communities,
Okay.
recovery communities, A groups, they call them.
Mhm.
And it was super helpful because they didn't mess around. They didn't pretend like this was no big deal. There was no like, you've got this. I remember I would go every week and the old timers would look at us and say, this is going to kill you. It's going to kill everything you care about. You will
Mm.
lose it all if you don't do something about this.
Right.
And I needed that early on,
Yeah.
right? I needed that
Yeah.
reality to sink in because I needed something to beat all the lies I had built up over time that it's not a big deal. It doesn't hurt anyone. I can stop anytime. And being in those groups of people who had really truly fought addiction helped me to get to a place where my recovery was mine. And I really began to
Mm.
love it. And I loved what it brought for me. I
Mm.
loved the boundaries that I was setting because life was easier. And
Yeah.
so that I think was such a key component for my own healing, but eventually for ours as a
For you.
couple.
Matthew, I want to ask you a question now, for the men or the spouse. Let's just say spouse out there because it can be men and women who
Mhm.
may be hiding something right now and who are listening saying, I think God is stirring something in me that this cannot stay hidden any longer. But there's the fear of shame. There's
Mhm.
the fear of disclosure. And you talked just beautifully about owning this without shame,
Mhm.
as kind of where the journey takes you. But for someone who's still sitting on this side where, hey, the shame barrier's there, I
Yeah.
don't think I can walk through that. What encouragement would you have for that person?
Yeah, I think one, just I know what a lonely place that is.
Mm.
Shame is so isolating.
Mhm.
I felt so alone, and we had so many friends. I've been really blessed with a lot of people in my life throughout, and I have felt very alone when I have
Mm.
been most in my shame. And so I think just reminding people that I get it is really hard to feel alone, and then but then to do things that keep you alone. And I think the what I usually will let people know is two things. One, you will be absolutely amazed at the grace and love that people show. I
Mm.
was for sure that this was going to be a scarlet letter, that the moment
Right.
this got out, I would lose my ministry, I would lose my friends, my family.
Mm.
I have lost some things, some relationships did go away, but I have gained so much more in
Mm.
coming forward with this.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I gained was the opportunity to experience real connection. What I realized was is that by lying, I was actually preventing us from ever experiencing connection for myself, of ever feeling chosen, right? What I was doing was I was managing Joanna's image of me so she would choose me.
Right.
But in that, like Joanna was saying with around safety, I was never actually feeling chosen. I was always feeling like I have to keep appearances up. I have to do everything perfect. I have to keep all the lies going.
Right.
And so I never actually felt like you choose me for you. When Joanna got my story, and I mean all of it, every detail, all the pieces, she still looked at me and said, okay, like I choose you. And
Mm.
she knows it all now. And she still chooses me. And that has been the greatest gift that I kind of gave myself in recovery. And so that's what I tell people. Like, if you want to feel chosen and loved, it will only come through honesty. It
Mm.
can't come from secrets. And so coming out of the shadows is what really gives ourselves the chance to be seen, to be accepted, and to be loved.
Mm. Now, God has given you guys a story, like you said, not one that you ever would have asked for, but He's brought you to a place where you've experienced healing and He's brought you into ministry and helping others. And we know that pornography is a big one when it comes to betrayal trauma. There are other things that can come up too. And so I'm wondering if you can just describe to us what is betrayal trauma?
Yeah, it is, at the core, it's not even as much about the actions that were
Mm.
done that were hidden. It's the fact that they were hidden. It is
Right.
amazing. We will sit with couples, and here we do a process called full disclosure, where that betraying spouse shares, like Matthew was saying, shares everything, every detail. And it never fails, but for so many partners, it doesn't matter how long that disclosure is, 5 pages or 55 pages,
Wow.
but it's the fact that so much was hidden
Mm.
that carries so much of that trauma for them. Because
Mhm.
what really happens is my world, the reality that I believed in about our relationship, about who this person is, even about who I am, is shattered in an instant,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
All of a sudden, that narrative that I had in my head about what our family was, that's not what it was. And I have to go back through our entire history and rethink every moment.
Right.
Mm.
Was that moment real? What else was going on at that time when you missed this really important event? What was actually going on? It wasn't
Right.
the thing you told me, right? And so it's this having to completely reorient around my life and my own story that causes so much of that trauma, along with that feeling of powerlessness. I didn't choose this, right? If I would have had the opportunity, the information up front, I may have made different choices, but I wasn't given that option. My power was taken away from me. And so the boundaries that I would have had, I wasn't able to have because this person hid these behaviors. And those behaviors they range so much in terms
Mm.
of what they are, right? There are a number of different activities people will engage in sex addiction. That's not just sex, there's emotional affairs and right time and expenses that can be resources that are used to fuel the addiction. It's incredible. And so when we do these full disclosures, right, we'll list everything will be listed out. And so for that betrayed partner, being able to finally wrap their head around this is my reality.
Mm.
And now I do get a choice. Now I get a choice what I do moving forward. That's the first kind of step of healing, even for them.
Yeah, I was working with a couple. There was not actual sexual betrayal, but there was financial betrayal.
Mm.
The husband had emptied out some retirement accounts because the crash of '08 had really hurt them financially, and he moved money to kind of cover some expenses, but didn't tell his wife about it.
Mm.
And 10 years later, she found out. Now, they had actually built back some financial stability, but just the reality that all these things had gone on, right? under her nose, right, where she behind her back, and she wasn't really given a chance to speak into it. And I remember her sharing, like, the biggest thing was is like, I would have just wanted to be on board. I didn't
Mm.
understand why he was so stressed all the time, why he was so upset about everything. And so this betrayal really runs deep, regardless of the behaviors. It doesn't minimize the behaviors, but it really makes that lack of honesty the core breaking of the connection that we're looking for in marriage.
Right. As you've been talking and sharing, and I still have this image of a plane being built as we're flying or falling. And the betrayal that we're talking about, I'm hearing it and seeing it as lies that we're trying to, strap the wing on with, or,
Mhm.
I'm just trying to keep the propeller on with this lie. And
Yeah.
and it sounds like when you finally have this full disclosure, this therapeutical disclosure, the lies come off, the
Mhm.
the plane crashes essentially.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Pretty much.
how do you start to rebuild from there? I think I've
Yeah.
heard in your story that it was a little bit haphazard. You had to kind of figure it out as you went along.
It
But
was.
you guys
Yeah.
have learned from that. Can you share your?
Oh, yes. We have learned so much about what to not do.
Okay.
And like we said before, part of our journey then instilled in us a passion to help other couples so they didn't have to, go the meandering route.
Mhm.
But we actually wanted to build a clear pathway for couples who want full restoration after
Mm.
betrayal. And so we actually created with a colleague of ours, Dan Drake, it's called the intimacy pyramid. And
Mm.
this is the path. And it's
Okay.
really, really simple. So you can even imagine a triangle. I don't know
Yeah.
if you're familiar, but Maslow's hierarchy of
Yes.
needs, right, is
Yes.
this triangle. And we start at the foundation. We have to build that first, and then we move up. And so these are all the components of healthy relationship, healthy intimacy, not just after betrayal, any relationship, but especially for couples who've gone through betrayal.
Mm.
This is the way they're going to rebuild. And so that bottom layer, that's the honesty layer that we've already been talking about through full disclosure, through complete transparency, openness with one another. And so starting there, creating that openness, that transparency, that honesty, which also brings the power balance back because when someone is
Ah.
holding information, they're holding power in the relationship. That's going to create an imbalance that does not feel safe. So it
Mhm.
also starts to rebalance some of that power that lets the couple move into that next layer, which is the safety layer.
Okay.
So honesty isn't just it's not enough. It also needs to be safe
Mm.
honesty. And
Mm.
part of that is understanding a big one we talk about is responsibility, reliability, regulation, understanding what is mine to take ownership of in this relationship. It's my responsibility to take care of myself and my sobriety or my healing, my emotions. Am I doing that reliably? And then can I show up in relationship from that healthy, constructive place? Not 100%, because none of us is perfect, but 90 to 95% of the time. And that takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, especially when there's been this chaos of addiction, right? Is the opposite of regulated. And so
Mm.
learning regulation, learning to show up, honor boundaries, honor those requests for safety, and that puts that safety layer in place.
And from safety, when someone's showing up differently, so the example of betrayal, what Joanna experienced is that when things were hard, I bolted.
Right.
When they
Okay.
were when they were vulnerable, when they were real, I was out. And
Mhm.
so what she needed to see was
Mhm.
that when things were hard, I would actually be able to lean
Mm.
in and that she would be met with someone there. And
Mhm.
that's what helped her to trust me again. And so
Mhm.
on top
Okay.
of safety, we have trust. And
Mm.
trust is really only built when you have honesty and safety. It's what allows the couple to say, okay, we can work together again. We can be a
Mhm.
team together again. We can go through life. We now have all the information. I know you're not going to bolt. So now we're going to figure life out. And that's what you
Mhm.
do as a couple. And that's when things start to get fun. You start to go, okay, who do we want to be? How do we want our life to look?
Mhm.
What do we want our family to be about? And that work allows us to begin to build that trust. And when enough
Mhm.
trust is established, that's what allows for people to be vulnerable. And that's that
Mm.
next level. Vulnerability is this great thing, but it's something people get confused that, like, I just lead with vulnerability. Like, hey, I'm Matthew. Here's the worst things I've ever done, right? And it's like, whoa, 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 that's too much.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. A lot of couples when there's been betrayal, they want to go right back into vulnerability and they kind of crash in on themselves because there's not enough trust in the relationship to hold it. Joanna had been vulnerable early in our relationship, but I wasn't. And so now she had to trust me, and I had to lead in vulnerability. I now had to show the way. And so she could decide to get vulnerable again, which meant things like grieving, doing works of forgiveness, counting the costs of what the betrayal meant for us, how it impacted us, and what it stole, what my addiction stole from my whole life. That grieving work, that deep vulnerability, that's what allowed Joanna and I to be one again, which is this idea of intimacy, that the two become one. And it's fun because when you see couples do this work the right way, they show up with a lot of passion. They're excited about their relationship. They like their spouse. They like who they are together. They have a sense of purpose. They're like, God did this. There's a thing here, and we want to do something with it. But they're also like playful and silly, and they can be relaxed and uninhibited, and they're not everything is serious. And so it's really fun watching couples go along this journey. And when we've laid this out for couples, I think it's helped them to see like, oh, okay, this is doable. Like I can do this. Like I can build bit by bit and know it's okay. Maybe we're not at the top yet.
Not just doable, but we're working towards something that actually looks really good. It feels like it's worth working towards. And I know that was a big question I had. I was like, well, it sounds like we can survive this, but will we ever really thrive? Or will our relationship be always just a little bit less than I had always hoped for? Right. So I'd always carry a little bit of disappointment in my heart. And that lasted for a long time. And I had big questions about if that would ever change. And so I think experiencing it and that hope, we just wanted other couples to know that you can get there. It is worth fighting for that relationship. And it's going to be so much better than you ever could have dreamed your relationship could be.
As you're describing that, I feel like we have the same heart for marriages, that marriages are alive and thriving, not just fine. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're fine. But like, yeah, actually enjoying that relationship and building it together. And I love hearing that. That's wonderful.
What does it look like for, say, a couple to come to you and say, "Hey, we've had this. We know the plane's fallen apart." And I know there's no typical journey, but I'm just thinking for any listeners who say, "I want to work with the Raabsmith team,"
Yeah.
what would it look like to say, "Hey, this is." Imagine yourselves coming to you.
Yeah. It's been a really big blessing because I can remember us sitting on the couch of our marriage counselor when we were going through recovery and just sitting next to Joanna being like, is this gonna work? And and he was an older guy and he had all the confidence in the world. He's like, you're gonna be fine. Right. And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. And now I get the joy of I get to sit on calls with people who reach out and say, hey, we want to work with you, or we want to know a little bit while you do. And I get to let them know like it's gonna be a journey. There's gonna be work, but you are gonna get to a place that it's worth it. One of the things that we sought out to do when we did this work was to work as a couple and to work with other couples. And so our whole team, everyone's a couple and everyone's been through this journey personally. And so every couple that comes to us, we get to sit with them and say, hey, professionally, training wise, we know exactly the steps to get you there. We also know the personal bumps, bruises, challenges, right? Things that are going to go there. And it starts off a little bit more individualized because early on, you don't have that trust and partnership. And so a lot of times I'm working with the husband, Joanna's maybe working with the wife, and we're really helping them to kind of figure some personal things out first so that they can rebuild that partnership. And when they rebuild that partnership, we've been lucky enough to put together this group program. Because one of the things we realized was when we went through our betrayal journey, we were so alone.
Right.
Our good friends, they didn't understand it. We had people who loved us and supported us, but they didn't know what it was like. They didn't understand what a trigger was and a lot of the things that we went through. And
we had individual communities that understood, right? So I could meet with other partners who had been betrayed, who understood that. Matthew would meet, right, with addicts, betrayers, but there was no space for us to be honest and authentic and vulnerable as a couple together with another couple. And we realized that was actually stunting our growth.
yeah, and we were in San Diego at the time and we begged two other couples to come and join a small group around this topic. And they both were like, no, absolutely.
Really not. Terrible.
And we asked them again, and they were like, no. And we asked them like a third time, and they were like, maybe. And we're like, okay, great, we've got them. And
Friday.
eventually, we got the three of these couples together. We called it Marriage 2.0, and we met for 12 weeks. And I don't even the curriculum we went through, it didn't even matter. We just met and we talked and we shared. And it was that ability to be known and seen at that level just radically changed things for us. And so we started a group program a couple of years ago out of our practice, and we connect couples all across the world. We have couples that are on the other side of the ocean. We have couples that are all spread out around the continent, and they come together each week and they're working on their marriages, and they're in that place of going, how great do we want to be? And one of our favorite things is once a year we get everybody together for a retreat, and usually two or three couples give their testimony. And you get to hear really hard stories that the plane is on fire on the ground, and then you get to hear the couple tell about putting it back together and building it. And my favorite part is at the end of every testimony, we don't prompt them, they just do this. They look at each other and they'll say, I am so glad I'm married to this person.
Wow.
I'm so glad we have our relationship. And you would think that is impossible for couples who've been through this kind of thing, but they are so thankful that they have what they have. And it is just like, for us, it's really the way God has continued to bless our journey, is to be able to see these couples and then them use their story to give life to other couples who are starting out and are like, are we going to make it? Right. And so it's just been a really, really fun part of the process.
Wow. As you're saying that, I'm thinking two things. One, God is incredible. First of all, that the God that we worship, the God of the universe, would enter into our stories to make something that seems beyond hope, to bring back new life, new hope, and restoration, and not just rebuilding something, but as we've been talking about, thriving into something so new and alive, which is so beautiful. And the other thing that I'm just reminded of, and we talk a lot about on our podcast here too, is we cannot do our marriages alone. And I love this call to community, to accountability, walking together through that. So
Now, you guys also have a book as well. Is that correct?
We do.
And so can you tell us a little bit about, so if a couple is just starting to explore this and maybe they're not ready to jump into meeting with you guys,
Yes.
would the book be helpful as well?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the book is called Building True Intimacy, Creating a Connection That Stands the Test of Time. It's on Amazon, and we really walk through that intimacy pyramid that we just laid out. And each of the layers, they have three individual components that helps build that level of the pyramid. And so we go through each of those components and really describe what it looks like. And we really wrote the book for all relationships. We kind of used what we learned from working with couples who had to build from the bottom up and applied that to everybody's relationship. And so it's really for anyone, but definitely for people going through this journey, a great starting place. And we're going to have actually a workbook for recovery couples specific that walks them through, along with some pretty detailed exercises to go deeper into each of those levels and components. And that should be coming out in the next few months. And so that will be another great resource for them to kind of get started in, and then decide, okay, what other support or resources do we need along the way?
amazing. Well, we will certainly put a link to your book in our show notes. We're getting near the end of our time with you, but we love asking our guests these rapid fire questions. There's just three of them. We haven't prepped you for these, so you're going on the spot.
That's right. No promises.
There you go. So in one or two sentences, and each of you can answer this, if you could go back to your wedding day and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
I mean, mine's pretty obvious and straightforward. It would be honest with her, tell her the truth, and just let him know, like, she is strong and loving enough to handle it.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I think for me, it's the trust yourself, and be willing to keep pushing. If you don't get an answer that is settling, keep pushing, and you're worth on the honesty that you're asking for.
Oh, beautiful.
Great. Question number 2 is, what is one indispensable thing in your marriage today?
Ooh.
I would say the 4 steps. So that is the tool that we use to regulate ourselves when we get dysregulated. And so it's the thing that we learned early on before coming into recovery. And that is the one thing that has transformed our marriage the most. And we use it to this day. And so, yeah, we would not be here right now if it wasn't for that tool.
Yeah. Just because she took that one, I would say the other one would be our check-ins. So one of the things we started doing when we were in recovery, because we didn't have honesty, is we started doing a nightly check-in. And it was for each of us to reflect and then share what we're feeling, where we showed up well, where we struggled, what we needed to do. For me, it was a little bit of where I was in my sobriety journey. Was I sober that day? How was I doing in recovery? And we were really, really consistent with that, and for a number of years. And we ended up writing one of our own. It'll be in our workbook, and we share it a lot of times with people. And it's still to this day. We use it on dates. We use it just as a way to stay connected, because we have 3 kids. We own our own business. We are very busy. And so even though we are together most days, most hours, we still find ourselves disconnected with all of the responsibilities. And so that 20 minutes that we take just to check in and talk can be one of the most life-giving things to our marriage.
Wow. You guys have hooked us now with, especially Joanna, with this 4 steps you've alluded to.
Hint, hint, but what is it really about?
Is that in your book? We can find out more in your
We do. We cover it actually in the book under the chapter on regulation.
Yep.
It comes from a therapeutic modality called restoration therapy, which is really wonderful process. And like I said, something we've been really grateful to finding. God was really good in connecting us with it.
Okay, so I feel like
I think we need to buy their book.
we're going to buy their book. And we're also going to have you back so we can talk about that more in
We'd
detail.
love
it.
So we're just that's just a hook for
Yes.
a follow-up conversation.
Absolutely.
Finally, where can people find you guys?
Yeah. What's really nice, we're the only Raabsmiths in the whole wide world. We actually combined our last name. So if you go to
P. Smith.
Yep. So if you go to Raabsmithsteam.com, you're going to find us. If your listeners want to go to Raabsmithsteam.com/free, that check-in we talked about, they can have free, and we do a little 30-day encouragement to help them kind of utilize it and integrate it. And that is for every relationship. Every couple could serve their marriage by kind of checking in with each other.
That's wonderful. Well, we will link those in the show notes as well.
Thank you so much, guys. This has been an amazing conversation. Would you be willing to pray for our listeners to close this episode?
Absolutely. Loving God, who cares for every bit of creation and who sees and values and adores every relationship on this earth. God, I know that you are a God who cares for marriages. You are a God who helps bring people together, and you are a God who sustains them even through the hardest times. God, I know that out there right now listening, there are couples, there are husbands, and there are wives who are feeling fractured, disconnected, maybe even feeling just miles apart emotionally, relationally from their spouse. And we know, God, that you are trustworthy and powerful enough to bring those marriages together, to bring those relationships together so that they might create life for both the husband and the wife, but also, God, that they might bring life to those around that relationship. And so we give you thanks for that, God, and we pray for that to happen in the lives, in the hearts of those that are listening right now. It's in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for the privilege of journeying with you today as we seek God's best for our marriages.
Before you go, if you've been blessed, challenged, or inspired by what you've heard today, please bless us by hitting the follow button, leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and sharing this podcast with family and friends.
You can also support this nonprofit podcast by making a charitable donation at our website, livingmarriages.com.
Until next time, praying the life, intimacy, and connection of God's love over you and your marriage.